All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Monday afternoon. Today, or this whole week, I'm going to be talking about gastrointestinal and related issues. So we're going to go over the liver, gallstones, kidneys, even though they're not part of gastrointestinal, but it's there. So we're going to cover that. But I know a number of people have been waiting for me to talk about gallstones and how they happen with insulin resistance and what's going on. So we're going to dive into that. But first, for everybody who doesn't understand insulin resistance, I kind of want to go over some of that, tell you what some symptoms are, how you can tell if it's you with or without blood work, and just the importance of insulin resistance, why I'm here every day talking about it. So we're going to get to the gallstones in a little bit because it's really important, right? It's affecting, I think, what did they say? More than half of US adults have non-alcoholic fatty liver, and that can lead to gallstones and cirrhosis and worse. So let's talk about all that in a second. Insulin resistance, this thing that I keep talking about, really comes down to the fact that our food is converting into energy in our system too quickly. Not to mention that we have all these lovely people who mean well, who are telling you to eat every 2 hours. In fact, my daughter and I were having a conversation today for us, and Dr. Jason Fung talks about this a bit too, that the more of the variety in foods we get, the more of these delectable things we get. We're training our brains to want more of that. We're training our brains to be hungry and want to eat. So one of the best ways, we'll start right off the bat, one of the best ways to start combating insulin resistance, sadly, is to make your food a little bit more boring. Eat the same things routinely. Get your palate to recognize this. Like, I have sausage and eggs every morning for breakfast. I eat chicken, steak, or salmon at least once or twice a week, right? So those, I'm rotating between those, but I don't go out and create crazy dietary changes. So it just depends on what you want to eat. If that's not your jam, that's not your jam. You find what you do want to eat. By the way, in the Beating Insulin Resistance group over on Facebook, I'm starting to put some recipes in there for people who've been asking for that. So if you're needing that help with insulin resistance, hop on in the group and start getting that help. But back to insulin resistance and this whole thing about eating every 2 hours. The other thing with eating every 2 hours, a number of doctors have talked about the fact that when we're eating like that, we're creating this system where the body's expecting us to eat every 2 hours. Now it's hungry, and it's hungry all the time, and it's creating this cycle of, okay, they're going to eat, we're going to create more insulin in the bloodstream, and when that insulin level gets high for chronic periods of time, then we start to get sick. And there's a whole factor around all of that. So some of the best ways to get over it, we're going to go over in a little bit. I'm doing an extended fast. Hey, Sarah. And I'm going to go over why I'm doing that, answer any questions you guys may have, because this is important. I want you guys to have the best knowledge, the best ammunition you can for your health. And look, if you don't agree with what I say and you want to go look at something else, great. But for the people who are struggling and they just don't know, and you want to hear this and take it in and understand this could be you, amazing, because that's where I was 2 years ago. So we're eating too much too often. It turns into fuel in our system too quickly, causing a need for insulin. And I was just listening to, because I listen to these guys constantly, Dr. Bickman talking, and he said, this thing of insulin resistance is too much insulin. He said, why are doctors giving patients more insulin? I'm going to explain why that can be very dangerous for you in a minute. But why would you give somebody more of something that they're already overproducing in their body? That would be like telling someone with hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, too much thyroid, they're already developing Graves' disease and having a number of other things. Why would you go and give them more thyroid medication? If somebody's struggling with alcoholism, why would you give them more alcohol to help them? That's what they're doing with diabetes and insulin resistance. And yes, I get this question a lot, and I understand, because most people don't know, and it's fine. That's why I'm here sharing information, right? So diabetes is end stage insulin resistance. You get the insulin resistance first. It becomes prediabetes. Then it becomes diabetes type 2, or possibly Alzheimer's, or a number of other things that can happen. We'll go over again. But it all starts with the insulin resistance, which is starting because too much food creating the need for insulin too much, too often in the body, and we're never taking a rest from it. We're in this society, in this system where we're eating all the time. We don't need to eat every 2 hours. We just don't. So some people may notice some weight loss at first by eating every 2 hours, but what they're doing is training their metabolism to need that fuel. And their metabolism starts to override it, and over a period of time, they'll start to put more weight on and find it more difficult to lose weight and find that they're now insulin resistant. So the best way around it is to stop all the snacking and all the eating all the time. I'm currently on a 5-day fast. Today is day 1. Today is probably the toughest day of the 5-day fast, right? So you're going to see me drink a lot of water. And I will be going over, after this live, I'm going to be creating some videos talking about what happens to your body in the first of the 5-day fast, why it's so important to insulin resistance, and then what happens to my body every day after on a 5-day fast. Is it safe for women? Yes. There's a number of times when it's not safe. I will go over those in the videos I do. So watch for those. Like pregnant women should probably not be doing extended fasting. I'm not talking about the intermittent fasting that we do daily, but extended fasting should probably not be done by a woman who's trying to grow a baby. It should probably not be done by somebody who doesn't have a lot of excess fat on their body that they can use for fuel. It should probably not be done by people in a number of other states. However, they've shown that this fasting can help with heart disease, with not just obesity, with so many other things. And I got off track, didn't I? That would be me. I get off track so easily because I get excited about pieces. I feel like my kids have, okay, so this is really off track, but have you ever watched the movie Up and the little dog Doug? He's like, squirrel, squirrel. My kids used to say that to me all the time. And I feel like that. I feel like every new little piece that comes up, I get so excited and I run off over there and then I'll come back. So I'm back. All right. So, now, insulin resistance, when we have that excess insulin in the body and it's creating this disease, what's happening is, or disorder is, our cells start to become resistant to it. And really what's happening is our body is breaking down the food we eat into very simple terms called glucose. And one of the places it goes through is the liver. And you'll see me do a video on that here tomorrow. But the liver breaks it down into glucose and sometimes into a paired glucose called glycogen, but it still is sugar in the bloodstream. Our body can only handle about a teaspoon of that processed sugar or broken down sugar in our bloodstream. When it gets to be more than that, the body says, uh-oh, and it creates insulin. Insulin is a transport for that sugar. So yes, a lot of people say insulin is a fat storage hormone. In a sense, it is, because insulin is what carries the sugar to the fat cells to be stored as fat. So the energy can't get to the fat cells without insulin. So I was just listening to Dr. Bickman talk about this too, that they used to say that insulin resistance came as a result of being fat or obese or having excess fat. And they're now understanding that that's not true. You have to have the excess insulin to store the fat. And then you're having problems with the insulin resistance. And they will always, you'll hear diabetic doctors, you'll hear so many doctors. How many of you guys have heard your doctors tell you, just lose weight and you'll feel better. Just lose weight and all this will get better. Just lose weight and your diabetes will get better. Well, it's probably more of a factor of you becoming more insulin sensitive, that both your diabetes gets better and your weight goes down. So it all links back to the insulin and not just the fat cells. Getting rid of the fat cells couldn't happen if we didn't shut the insulin off, okay? If there's insulin in the system wanting to carry energy to the fat cells, you're not going to empty the fat cells. It's counterintuitive to the body. So we need to understand those things. But every other cell in the body starts to become overwhelmed by so much insulin in the body. Then anytime we have too much of anything, like hyperthyroid or too much testosterone or too much, anything in the body that's too much, the body starts to shut down because it's not made to take that on, right? Just like a bicycle is not made to tow the load of a Mack truck, our body can't take too much of anything. So in the presence of too much insulin, building insulin resistance, because the cells are saying, whoa, Nelly, I don't want any more of this. I'm not taking any more. You're putting me at risk. I'm not doing it. And the cells get a little cranky. And even when they do need it, they're not taking it because they're just like, I'm done with you, insulin. That's when insulin goes, well, I have to store this someplace. And this person keeps putting food in their face, and they're putting food in their face that's turning into glucose really quickly. So I got to dump this off. And so it starts storing it in your fat cells. Okay. That's the process of insulin resistance. Now, when you start to see it as prediabetes or diabetes, which is what your doctor is looking for, is when those fat cells are now saying, oh, now you've made me mad, and I'm not holding on to any more either, because if I take on any more, I'm going to explode, and I'm not going to have that. I want to survive. Every cell in the body really wants to survive. So it starts spilling that sugar back into the bloodstream. Now you start to see your A1C go up, your blood glucose go up, and your triglycerides go up. And now you're starting to be diagnosed as pre-diabetic or diabetic, but you've probably been insulin resistant, building to that point for a very long time. And it looks different in every body. Some bodies can get extremely obese before they become before they become diabetic, and some will turn diabetic very quickly, depending on how their fat cells store and respond to insulin. So I hope all that's clear. Now, the next question I get from people is, and how many of you guys want to know, well, how do I tell if it's me? If you can't tell just because you're obese, or you could be thin and have insulin resistance, how do you tell? Well, there's some cues that are going to tell you if you're insulin resistant. Number one, if you want to go to the doctor and get the test, it's called a fasting insulin test. Some doctors will run it, some won't, some insurances cover it, some don't. So it's just that thing. So if you have that time and money to go spend and do that, you can go ahead and do that. If you have labs that you've done annual labs and you go to take a look at your labs, this is a second clue as to how, or second and third clue as to how you can tell if you're insulin resistant. Your triglycerides are high. If the number on your lab panel is over 150, that's a clue. Combined, especially combined with a low HDL. For men under 50 on your HDL, for women under 40 on your HDL, those two numbers combined probably mean that you're insulin resistant. So now what you're going to do is take the triglyceride, divide it by the HDL. Why I always use my fingers, I don't know. It helps me. Okay, so triglycerides divided by HDL, the resulting number should be below 1.5, and that will tell you if you're suffering with this or not. Not perfect, but it's a really good indicator, okay? So the NIH will say 2 or lower. Metabolic scientists are saying 1.5 or lower. But regardless, any number over 2, between 2 and 3, you're probably needing to start addressing this. If that number, the resulting number, is over 3, then you need to address it because you are insulin resistant. So go find your labs, go get those numbers. If you can't remember that calculation, message me. I'll tell you again, and I'll try to do that video again this week. It's in my profile, but I know there's thousands of videos there. So there's that. Now, some other ways you can tell that you're insulin resistant without labs and all of that. If your blood pressure is 130 over 80 or higher, you're likely insulin resistant. That means that at 130 over 80 or higher, that means that that you have hypertension. 95% of hypertension is linked to insulin resistance. And Sherry Sue, hey Bob, glad to have you here. Okay, wait, somebody's asking me, and Sherry Sue, I'll deal with that in a little bit. I've never been afraid to answer the credentials. I am not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I worked in the medical field for years. I worked in allergy. I worked in urgent care. I worked in hormonal offices, and I was allowed to talk about all of this stuff from the doctors. I asked them, and they said, yes, talk about it. I didn't have this protocol at the time, but yeah. So there's that. But do you have to have a doctor's credentials to understand that our nutrition is off and that it's causing problems? Do you have to have a doctor's note to read a book and understand what's happening and to be able to ingest information? Do you have to have that to say that you're smart enough to understand things? Or the fact that doctors were not able to help me. I even had doctors tell me straight out that they could not do anything for me. There was nothing they could do, that I had metabolic syndrome, that I had this worst metabolic type, and there was nothing they could do. And so I spent years going out searching and finding answers, and was able to take care of it on my own when my doctor didn't. So there you have it, Sherry Sue. I've answered that for you several times, and that's the last time I'm going to answer it for you. So you guys, I've never claimed to be a physician. I often will say that I am not. I'm just a woman who got really sick, had to go out and find answers on my own and figure out how to take care of this. But now on my own, when doctors were giving me medication after medication after medication for decades, now I'm not on any medications. I don't have diabetes anymore. I don't have hypertension anymore. I was able to figure this out, and with the help of listening to doctors and scientists who do know, got my life under control. And now I'm here to share some of that information with you, because not everybody wants to sit down and listen to all those guys and read through all those journals and papers and stuff like I do. Wow, I have everything in here today. So I do not take Mounjaro. I do not advocate for Mounjaro. Metformin, Wegovy, Trulicity, those GLP-1 agonists, which, by the way, Dr. Bickman talks about in his book, and the statements I'm going to make come directly from Dr. Bickman. He said that, number one, we have to understand that weight comes from insulin, right? If we have too much insulin, like I said, why would we give a patient insulin to cure a problem where they have too much of something? Those GLP-1 agonists are forcing your body to produce something that it's already producing too much of, and it's forcing your body to take that insulin and store it someplace that does not want to store it. So that's what's happening with those. Can you understand that that could cause problems with your liver, with your kidneys, with your heart, with your thyroid? So Dr. Bickman, when he was asked directly what he would do, if someone was on any of those medications, he said he would, if they were someone he loved and cared about, he would tell them to get off of it as quickly as possible. Now, if you're on them, you need to titrate off. So the insulin gets stored in your fat cells primarily. It gets stored in your liver, and it can get stored in your muscle cells. But every cell needs insulin. So here's an interesting thing. We were talking about how you can tell if you're insulin resistant, right? So if you have skin tags, that's those skin cells taking up too much insulin. And you know what? I'm not going to deal with that right now. So let's go here, there. You guys, I will take whatever you have to say. Comments about my appearance, that's your issue and not mine. So you're not welcome in this live, because that's just somebody who's negative, hurt, and needing to hurt somebody else. And I don't need that. Neither do any of you guys. So skin tags mean that your skin cells, keratinocytes, are taking up too much of that energy, too much of that insulin. So they're overproducing those skin cells, and it shows up as skin tags. There's other places where it happens, like inside of your blood vessels, in the innermost wall of your blood vessels, called the endothelium. Those cells will start using up the insulin too much, and it creates a thicker lining in the blood cells, which leads to vascular problems, and part of the reason why we're having hypertension or high blood pressure. So there's that. Jenny, so if you go to my, it's called Why We Get Sick, but if you go to my profile and there's a link on my recommendations, the books that I read and talk about and talk from are all in there. So Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Benjamin Bickman are some. Dr. Lee, L.I. is a great one. He deals with food as medicine. Dr. Yao has been talking about how calories don't count, and how hormones and genetics count more towards this weight than not. And then there's Dr. Pardeep, I believe he's out of Florida, that all talk about the same things I'm talking about right now. And there is more of an awareness about all of this stuff in the world today. So Dr. Bickman's book is the one that I would start with, and deal and talk and go from there. You're very, very welcome. So there's all of that. Now I'm going to go right back into some signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. Okay. Um, so some of those signs and symptoms, and by the way, I do have let me get a couple of slides up that came from these physicians, but we probably don't need them. We don't need them. So I talked about hypertension, right? I talked about the high lipids, the high triglycerides, low HDL, and the other thing is if you have a bulging belly, that's visceral fat being stored. So there's a center in your brain called the hypothalamus, and in the presence of insulin resistance, it cues that center cues the body to store more fat as visceral fat. You have two types of fat on your body. Subcutaneous, the white jiggly fat that none of us like, but it's not extremely dangerous, right? It can weigh us down, it can cause problems, but it's not extremely dangerous. Then we have the visceral fat. It's brown fat, it has mitochondria in it. It's there to help cushion and warm our organs. But in the presence of insulin resistance, when the hypothalamus is cueing too much fat to be stored there, now it's crowding out our stomach, our liver, our kidneys, our pancreas. It's causing problems with the gallbladder. It's causing problems with the intestines. It's causing problems all throughout the body. Now, I used to think that because that's what I was told, the visceral fat was pretty much neck down, neck to groin, right? Like underneath that muscle wall. But some doctors have been talking recently about how that visceral fat actually builds up in your throat and in your tongue, which I've done videos on fat tongue. And that's part of why you're having sleep apnea, because your tongue is choking you off when you sleep. And so that's caused by insulin resistance, cueing too much fat in your tongue. Okay. So if you're having tons of migraines, if you're having weight that won't go away, if you're having sugar cravings or salt cravings, if you're having swelling in your joints, those are all signs of insulin resistance. Are there other things that could be causing it? Yes. So always work with your doctor. But what I like to say is take care of the insulin resistance, clear that out of the room first. And then if you're still having a distended stomach, if you're still having joint problems and whatnot, then you probably have a clearer picture of what may be happening with you, and do you really need medications. So you can have one or a number of symptoms and be insulin resistant. If you have that blood pressure, though, I would say start acting as if you have insulin resistance, since 95% of high blood pressure comes from that. Now, I was going to talk about GERD today a little bit. What GERD is we have acids, right? That go when we eat. We have acids in our gut that help break down, or in our stomach, that help break down the food that we eat. Sometimes there's a sphincter or a muscle between our esophagus and our stomach that helps close it off when we eat. So it opens and closes when we eat. And when we're digesting, it's supposed to close off and keep those acids in the stomach, because the stomach has a pretty tough lining that can deal with that. But when the esophagus gets eroded by too much acid, too much insulin can cause this acid production. Then it starts to open up, and a little bit of that acid starts to splash up into your esophagus. That's called reflux, or gastroesophageal reflux disorder disease. So again, you can help to adjust that with getting more insulin sensitive. You've been on the system for a few months. Tell me what's going on. So there's GERD. If you're experiencing GERD, acid reflux, understand that you probably have some insulin resistance going on, and that you can help that. Now, in the beginning, the fiber part of the pre-meal part of the protocol that I used helped calm some of that down, so I wasn't having acid reflux as bad. And now my gut is primarily healed, and so I don't have acid reflux and those ulcerative type symptoms anymore 2 years in. So, hey, Debbie. So then as we move down through the body, I really wanted to just talk about GERD a little bit. That's really brief. I will do a more thorough video on GERD in a little bit. But gallstones. So my plan this week is to talk about liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and then gallstones. But I'm going to talk about gallstones today because so many people wanted to know about them. Gallstones, first of all, your liver processes all of this, not all of it, but a great amount of the sugar that we eat, right? And when we're doing things like eating a ton of refined sugar, when we're drinking a lot of fruit juice, it's putting a load on the liver. And the liver starts to become laden with fat and storing too much of fat and this glucose that we have. So now the liver's not functioning like it needs to. The gallbladder is a little, it's like the sidekick for the liver, and it sits out right underneath the liver. So as the liver is constantly creating bile and these juices for us, and bile, I'll tell you what that is in a second, it drips it down into this gallbladder that's underneath, and it stores it there. So now when you eat, your gallbladder has a storage tank of this acid, the bile, to digest your food. When you don't have a gallbladder, that storage unit is gone. So I'm going to tell you how that happens when you're also on Mounjaro. Your A1C is 12, now 7. You don't know which is helping me. Dose is 15. So, okay. If you were to look up Mounjaro or GLP-1 activators, and maybe what I'll do, user, is find time this week to do a more thorough video on those drugs. Again, what I can tell you is this. Mounjaro is forcing your body to create something that it's already creating too much of. Anytime you force your body to do something that's above and beyond what it's meant to do, you're going to have problems. It's causing problems with the liver. It's causing problems with your kidneys. It's causing problems. I've had ladies who've had thyroid problems afterward. It's forcing your body to accept this insulin that it's now increasing its dose of, because it's not a problem that you don't have enough insulin. It's a problem that you have too much. So Mounjaro is forcing you to produce more of that, and then forcing your body to utilize that. It's also making you nauseated. And in a number of people, it can actually multiply your fat cells. It's called hyperplasticity of your fat cells. So you're growing more fat cells as a place for that insulin to store. Okay, so your numbers are going down, but is it really addressing the root cause? No, it's not addressing the root cause at all. So if it were me, and according to Dr. Bickman, he would do the same thing, I would do the protocol and start addressing your A1C with natural foods. Dr. Fung says you can't fix a dietary disorder with a medication, and that's exactly what they have happening with you. They're trying to fix a dietary disorder by giving you medication, but they haven't fixed the root cause. So now you're likely to get more sick, just bluntly, you're likely to get more sick as time goes on. And we've been seeing more and more and more of that. You lose muscle mass, you lose skin elasticity, so many other things at the cost of getting your A1C down. Now, my A1C was 7.4 when I started. It's now 5.3. Never taken Mounjaro or any of those drugs. Jason's A1C was 16 or 13.3, and it's now down to 6 in just over a year. Never took any of those drugs. Karen's A1C was like at 12.2, and she's now down to like, I think 5.7 or close to that. Never took those drugs. So does the system work? Yes. Does Mounjaro bring down those numbers? Yes. Does it do it in a healthy way and a sustainable way? No, I will never believe that. I'm not a doctor, but that's my belief on it. After what I've seen and know about it and read, that's not what I'm doing. That's not where I go. Look, bone broth. I stopped all 10 drugs 2 years ago because I don't like what they do to your body. I worked in enough doctors' offices, had some doctors who would allow pharmaceutical reps to be in their office, some who said absolutely not. It'd be interesting to know if the doctor that gave you those would admit to you that they're making money off of giving you that drug. I had 2 family members who both worked for Big Pharma. So they were more educated about the drugs, at least as in the textbook, what the pharmaceutical company wanted them to know, than the doctors were. So a lot of times the doctors are just hearing from these pharmaceutical reps, and they're saying, okay, and maybe there's some brochures or maybe there's some data that they can look at, and they're like, okay. And the pharmaceutical rep has done a really good job of selling the doctor on utilizing that medication. And the doctor goes, okay, A1C's high. Here's this medication. I have a whole cabinet full of medications, or I have this thing, they're gonna give me, you know, a percentage, or they're gonna give me dinners or whatever. So the diet, Dr. Fung has written a number of books, Janine. So the obesity code, if you're just dealing with excess weight, the diabetes code, if you actually have, if you're really more concerned with the diabetes, it's all fairly similar. Dr. Bickman does a lot of similar work. Dr. Fung goes more into the fasting part of it. And then Dr. Fung has written the Obesity Code Cookbook, which I love and I do use. So that helps with how to eat for this lifestyle, right? We're just eating too much and too much of the wrong stuff. Can we still have those things once in a while? Yeah. But should we be eating them all the time? No. Are we being told that, you know, we need this food? Yep, we sure are. Okay. So, and by the way, if you go to my profile, I'm going to show you guys real quick, just real quick here. I have the protocol can be found here as well. But if you go to my profile on TikTok, click on my picture up top, that'll get you to my profile right underneath the red lights. If you click on that link right there, that will take you to my landing page, and the landing page is going to look like this. So there's the system I use is at the top, but right down here is a recommendations. I get a lot of people ask me about my glasses, so they're in there too. But like the ketone monitor that I use, the Fit Watch that I use, the books that I read, so Dr. Fung's books, Dr. Bickman's book, Dr. Yao's book are all in there. You can go in there and see the books that I'm reading and talking about. Not all of them, but a number of them, and that might help. Okay, and you can also use that, contact me on WhatsApp to get a hold of me if you need to do that. I'm also starting to post recipes in the Facebook group. So if you want to hop in there and get even more information and be able to just like chat at me when you want to, join that. So there's that. If all those books you can find on that my recommendations page. I hope that helps. And so you've lost 35 pounds. Yeah. So most people lose a good amount of weight on the system, and I gotta remember to turn the camera around, don't I? Because when you're becoming more insulin sensitive and you become more metabolically flexible, then your body's going to naturally start to shed fat. So I was going to talk about gallbladder, but I'm going to deal with this right now. And trust me, Crafty, I'll get back to the gallbladder because it's important. But look, when your body starts to shed weight, if you're insulin resistant, there's some interesting science that shows that an insulin resistant person, normally, you're very welcome, Crafty. So an insulin resistant person is not putting on as much muscle and lean tissue as an insulin sensitive person on a day-to-day basis. The worst part of it too is that when an insulin resistant person with normal weight loss procedures, calories in, calories out, all of those things that you've been told, they will lose more muscle than fat. And so the weight is coming from muscle loss and not fat loss with most insulin resistant people. The protocol that I talk about helps safeguard that. You're actually losing more fat than muscle. You're allowing your body to be nourished where it needs to be. And so the body's losing fat and maintaining muscle, because in an insulin resistant state, your body can't put on muscle. So when you become insulin sensitive and start, or more insulin sensitive and start losing weight, part of what happens, like I didn't lose weight the first 6 weeks because even though I had been a power lifter and had pretty dense musculature underneath all this, there's a lot of muscle under here. I'm not big without a cause. So I was starting to put on more lean tissue, and lean tissue doesn't just mean muscle, you guys. It can be your bone density. It can be the ligaments and joint tissues that hold you together. Those are all at risk when you're insulin resistant. So when you start to fix that, you start to put more weight on, because all of that tissue weighs more than fat. So as you lose fat and gain this lean tissue that your body so desperately needs, your weight may not change at first. Some people, it changes drastically because they have so much excess weight that their body needs to get that off. So there's that. So weight comes off differently for everybody. Now back to the gallbladder. I'll go into the liver a little bit more tomorrow and Wednesday, but just know that through a number of things that happen, your liver gets really sick when you're insulin resistant. A couple of things, especially if you're drinking fruit juices, guys. I don't have anything against fruit, but the fruit has fiber on it and fruit juice doesn't. So when you're drinking fruit juice, you've effectively stripped the part that's protecting you from that turning into sugar too quickly from the food, and now you're getting this big amount of fructose in your system, which puts a load on your liver because that's what has to process it. Our natural cane sugar is about half fructose, half glucose, so even that puts a load on the liver, but fruit juice puts a huge load on the liver. Now, as the liver starts to get sick and it starts to not function properly, it's going to affect the gallbladder. In fact, if you have gallstones, if you have gallbladder issues, if you've had to have your gallbladder removed, your liver probably is already at risk and you need to take a look at that. So like I know we talked before, Crafty, would I, do I need the system? Absolutely I do, even without a gallbladder, because it was never about, it is about the gallbladder, but it's always been about the insulin resistance, the too much insulin. So the sludge that is your gallbladder is holding is made up of water, salts, bilirubin, and cholesterol. Okay. So there's a confusion, right? People think, oh, I have to eat low cholesterol because I don't want my arteries to clog up. I don't want my gallbladder to fill up. It's not the cholesterol that's dietary cholesterol that's causing the problem. It's a cholesterol, a very specific type of cholesterol that the liver produces in response to the high amounts of sugar that we're eating. So sugar is causing the bad cholesterol, the saturated fat, a very specific type of saturated fat that's causing these arterial problems and the gallbladder problems. It's not the dietary fats of coconut oil and avocado oil and those things. Okay, so that's why I'm always saying eat those. Your body actually needs those saturated fats from dietary sources in order to help combat some of this stuff. But so water, salts, and bilirubin, which is old red blood cells, waste from red blood cells. The liver has to process those as well. And there's no real link between the bilirubin being off and insulin resistance currently. So, but the cholesterol and the rest, yes. So when you're insulin resistant, the liver's producing too much of this cholesterol. It's also producing too much of the LDL type B. I've done videos on that. So you actually, and I didn't know this, you guys, before either. So here we go. The LDL, or the one that they consider to be your bad cholesterol, actually has a large molecule and a small molecule. The large molecule, of course, is more buoyant and moves through the system easier and attaches less quickly. The small molecule is denser and it will attach to the walls of your blood vessels and get stuck in there. It doesn't sound like you would think the big molecules would be the ones getting stuck, but they're more buoyant. So if you think about taking a beach ball and a golf ball and standing on a bridge and dropping them in the river, the beach ball is going to float and the golf ball is going to sink to the bottom. That's the same thing that's happening in your blood. So when that LDL-B, which starts to convert more when we're insulin resistant, happens, now we have a cholesterol problem. Not just in our bloodstream, but it starts to happen in our gallbladder. So that's one problem. This increased and excess cholesterol in the gallbladder, creating this sludge that's in a normal instance good, but when there's too much of it, again, too much of anything is bad. That's one part of it, right? So that starts to make this gummy, gunky stuff that sits there and eventually will start to kind of crystallize and make stones. Crystallize is not the right word, but you get what I'm saying. The other thing is the gallbladder needs to contract to move that bile out. So if the gallbladder is not being able to contract like it's supposed to, it's not going to move that bile through, and now you're holding on to even more of that sludge and giving it more of a chance to turn into gallstones. And insulin resistance, through a number of actions, prevents your or contributes to your gallbladder not being able to contract when it's supposed to, or as much as it's supposed to. So now you have this sidekick to the liver that's supposed to be a reservoir for emergency use when you eat, and now it's just holding on to stuff that doesn't need to be. Yeah. Yeah, so you'll be surprised. Now, I don't have a gallbladder, and I've been very open about that because, again, when I suffer, I want everybody else to be able to understand so that maybe you don't have to go through this. I now know, we know that was probably insulin resistant for more than 30 years when we look back at signs and symptoms, right? So I lost my gallbladder because the doctors, I mean, I whine and piss and moan and say maybe I shouldn't have let them take it too soon. And then I'll catch up to reality and be like, they said it was so full of stones. It wasn't like one or two. I was just lucky that none of them dislodged before then, or maybe some had and I just passed them without realizing and thinking it was food poison. I have no gallbladder. That's a result of insulin resistance. Okay. I feel like it's a direct result of insulin resistance. Um, some of the statistics are, I mean, there's a chemical some people put out that make you more likely to have non-alcoholic fatty liver, which can lead to this whole gallbladder issue. But all of this, you have 15 times more likely to be have non-alcoholic fatty liver and all these resulting other problems when you're insulin resistant than somebody who's not. Whether you are obese or lean, the presence of insulin resistance can increase your risk of this liver disorder by 15 times. That's pretty massive. It's not doubling it. It's increasing your risk 15-fold. So that's huge. So I will, by the way, this helps because it's helping slow down the sugars and fats that I do eat. It helps keep me more normal. But now without a gallbladder, I do have problems if I get a hold of some too much refined sugar because I like food. I will have bathroom issues. I will have gastritis issues. I had gastritis last week, and that was the first time in 6 months since I started learning about my gallbladder and how to deal with that now that I've had a gastritis attack. But it's pretty severe, and so if you don't have a gallbladder and you are having gastritis attacks, understand that getting your insulin under control, making sure that you're staying away from those seed oils and those refined oils that they cook in at the restaurants is going to help you, as well as keeping away from refined sugars. So that will help with the gallbladder. But the gall issues linked to insulin resistance have to do with too much cholesterol creating sludge and the gallbladder not being able to contract to eject that liquid. It should be more of a watery, liquidy substance, but it starts to get really thick in the presence of insulin resistance. So harder to get out, and then the gallbladder's not ejecting it because it can't contract. So I hope that helps, Crafty, with some of that. I think Thursday is when I'll be putting out the videos on that in a little bit more detail of what's happening. I will be going over non-alcoholic fatty liver and liver disease. I'll be doing some videos on GERD today. I'll talk about gastroparesis, by the way, and things like kidney stones and some other things. As long as I'm talking about the liver today, this is a little bit off topic, but it ran into my mind, so I'm going to talk about that. Hepatitis C. The cause of hepatitis C is not linked to insulin resistance. However, in the presence of insulin resistance, hepatitis C is exacerbated. It gets worse and quicker in the presence of insulin resistance. So if you know anyone who has hepatitis C, who's been struggling with that, or is even thinking that might be a case, they getting control of their insulin is not going to cure their hep C, but it's going to help with the symptoms of it. So I hope that helps. Okay, any other questions? You guys, I have not talked about the protocol. The protocol that I use, that Crafty's using, that some other people are using, is this. It's very, very simple. Since this is a food-borne disorder, insulin resistance is born out of our food being manufactured, modified, and at a point where our body just doesn't really know how to handle it. What we're doing is we're putting back in parts that have been stripped out of our food so that our body so that our body, my affirmation alarm went off. Our body can deal with it more normally. So what we're doing is a tea that I drink in the morning. Now I'm on a 5-day fast, so I had this tea this morning because it doesn't break my fast, and tea is allowed on the fast that I'm doing. I'm talking about keeping my insulin levels down and maximizing some autophagy. So I'm not doing the hardcore water fast. I'm not there yet. I'm having the tea, but in a normal day, the tea gives me energy, mental clarity. It helps boost mood. It's actually been proven to help increase wellness score by 75% in a short study. And it helps you burn fat for fuel. It helps you feel full. So during a fast, especially an extended fast, this is golden. So this is how I've made it through 10-day fasts, because I'm still drinking the tea, and it helps shut down my hunger and helps me burn fat for fuel so that I don't have that hunger. Then you don't have to do the extended fast. I want to say that. I'm doing it because I choose to for my health. The protocol is this in the morning, shuts down fat, shuts down hunger, helps you burn fat for fuel. Pre-meal drink before I eat anything normally. So 10 minutes before I have this in cold water. There's a number of different blends of, there's 7 different fibers in here, soluble and unsoluble. Day 1 fasting is getting to me. So those fibers help slow down the delivery of sugars into your system. It helps slow down the delivery of fats into your system. And it has components in it that make it heart healthy. Both of them do. Both products do. So a tea in the morning that I have hot or cold, a pre-meal drink that I have before I eat anything, they're food products. So they are not approved by the FDA as much as your apple is not approved by the FDA. But they are in the PDR, the Prescriber's Digital Reference, even though they're not medication. They're some of the only real food products in the Prescriber's Digital Reference. So those 2 things have been what took my A1C from 7.4 and my fasting glucose levels in the mid to high 200s down to now like 98 every morning, and my A1C at 5.3, and reversed my blood pressure. To get the system, tea in the morning, pre-meal drink before you eat anything. I'm off of all my medications. You're just going to do the same thing. You're going to go to my profile picture here, click on it. That will take you to my TikTok page, my TikTok profile. And you're going to click on that link. That will take you to this page, which has the order form for the system. I need to go finish my bone broth and drink some water. You'll find the system right here. Click on that. It should say Michelle Found at the top. That's what's going to link you to me. I've been texting and calling people all morning and making sure they have what they need. If you want that, you buy from me. Just click on the buy now. That'll take you to the page where you're going to find that you get 30 teas, so 1 for every morning, 60 of the balance, 1 before each of your first 2 biggest meals, and you can choose your flavors. So lemon or lemon ginger for the tea, lime or orange for the balance. The lime will probably be going away in the next few days. It was a limited edition, and it was wildly popular. So they're almost sold out. If you want the lime, whether you're on the system currently or not, you got to get it ordered, or you might not get it again. It's amazing. I love the lime. But the next flavor that's coming out is called Apple Crush, and I love that one too. So nothing wrong with having all 3 flavors and giving yourself a little variety. Anyway, then put it on. If you put it on subscription, by the way, you're going to save about $15 overall because you're not paying shipping. You save $5 off of the total cost of the product, and you get a free hand mixer the first month that you order. And it just makes sure you never run out of product, but you can cancel it at any time, and you get a 5-day email before your next order comes out. So that's where you get the products, and I would be honored to be your coach and help you out with it and answer questions like I did today. So tomorrow I'll be back. We'll talk more about the liver tomorrow. Look for the videos coming out on GERD and what happens to your body day one of a fast today. Because right now what's happening with my body is that I'm leaning into this mode where I'll be hitting autophagy, which means that my body not only is burning fat for fuel. Autophagy means that it starts to remove cells that need to go anyway. Most of you, if you don't know, your cells turn over about every 9 weeks in your body. So they're continually in a cycle of growing and dying, your cells. So that's how come we age. That process starts to slow down and our cells are dying off quicker than we're making new ones, right? Fasting helps get rid of some of those cells, reduces the risk of cancer, increases your energy, increases your mental energy and clarity. It helps you lose weight. It can remove inflammation and some inflammatory proteins and whatnot from your system that are causing you joint issues. It can help with your gut microbiome so that that gets rebalanced. It gives your gut a chance to kind of take a break from digesting all of this stuff all the time. And on the other side of it, you start to feel much better. Dr. Fung is a total advocate for fasting. Again, there's a few times like pregnancy, if you're extremely lean or underweight, you should not be doing fasting. For the rest of us, it's not putting you in starvation mode. Your body is not eating your muscle. Trust me, your body is innately intelligent. It's my favorite phrase. Your body's innately intelligent. So when given the right tools, it's going to do the right thing. If you have excess weight on your body and you have cells that are in danger of turning into cancer or cells that are inflammatory, your body's not going to go, ooh, let me go find this juicy muscle cell over there that I need to survive and eat it up and leave all of this stuff that could put me at risk. It's going to eat up the things that are putting you at risk first. People see that their skin gets better, a number of things. I will start doing the fasting, 2 to 5 day fast. I'm trying to decide whether I want to do it the last week of the month or the first week, because it usually feels like I have so much going on the first of the month that it's hard to fast. But I will let you guys know. I would love to have like a fasting community of people who are really aimed at getting more insulin sensitive and taking care of their health through sources that are not costing you medicine that are causing more problems. Um, and even if you don't want to do the fast with us, you can join in and listen on and understand the benefits that are happening. And again, I don't do a water fast. I still do nutrients, as in some of the supplements like CoQ10 and whatnot that I take for my heart while I'm fasting. So I'll be getting all of that out. If you guys have any questions with that, let me know. On a normal day, you guys, I just do a 16-hour fast. There are days when I only do a 12-hour fast. But I feel like every once in a while doing this kind of cleanup, you know, how you sweep and mop your house, but every once in a while you do a deep clean, that's what a fast is for your body. So there's nothing wrong with doing it. You don't have to do it, but it's absolutely healthy for you. All right, guys, I'm going to go. And by the way, as far as helping clear that liver out that's already at risk from gallstones and this disorder with the gallbladder, because again, if your liver is sick, your gallbladder is sick. If your gallbladder is sick, your liver's been sick for a while. Fasting can help clear out that liver as well. Okay, I'll see you guys in the morning. All right, thanks for hanging out with me this afternoon. And we'll talk about the liver a little bit tomorrow and what happens on day 2 of a fast. Talk to you guys later.